Neal's got to be as a young guy playing in his first Iowa State game, takes a shot and gets it down. I told you he could hit it. That really shows you something.
From Winterset, Iowa. That brought the crowd to its feet, and a timeout for the Hawks. Gary, he hesitated the first time he got the ball. That time, no hesitation, and a big three for John Neal. Roman. Neal again! Oh, wow!
That's got to be a great feeling for Neal. He's away, but don't foul. Make him shoot the ball in. Don't foul and get three-point play.
Neal is having the game of his life. He has tied his career high, his second three-pointer. And this one was pure.
Well, there's the kick out, and smart play by Vroman.
I was really looking forward to this because I've known you since you were in the 4th grade. And I remember vividly when, and we'll get to it eventually, when you had hit those shots against Iowa, that I felt like I was watching my own kid play, because I know your dad, I know your history of, you know, how you got to that point and everything. And I just still remember you because I knew your dad in my 4th grade basketball camp thing at Winterset.
Yeah.
And you know, we moved away and we followed your little history here. So when you were in high school, I know you got hurt, I think your junior year possibly, is that right? And then you kind of got taken off the AAU circuit and that kind of messed up your recruiting. Is that right? Am I remember that right?
Yeah. Dating back to high school. We had a decent year at Winterset my junior season, and then junior summer I you know, kids do it all the time. You miss a layup or you have a turnover, and I punched that padding behind the basket like a moron and fractured they call it that boxer break. So my shooting hand, and I was pretty much sidelined my entire junior summer. Couldn't play. I was going to be a part of some of the AAU teams that were available. They had like the Martin brother tryouts, all that stuff. And I essentially had to miss all of that. So my recruiting that junior year was really non-existent because of that. So I mean, I went into my senior year kind of hoping that, you know, I could find a home almost anywhere.
So what were your other options besides walking on at Iowa State?
You know, all the Iowa Conference schools, some D2 schools, small D1 schools. No one really, as far as D1, no one really offered me small. You know, I could have gone to, you know, the Simpson route and those type of things. And I kind of shut off. I was pretty fortunate to where we had a connection to Iowa State. We knew Pete Taylor extremely well. My dad, he was kind of similar to your story. He saw us in diapers as well.
Right.
Kind of helped with the recruiting process, introduced myself to Coach Eustachy and their staff, and they came and watched a few games and said, hey, they've got a good team, the kid can play, and you know, we'd love to have him as a walk-on. So I was pretty fortunate to where I had an introduction within the Iowa State family, and then had a good game when they came along, and that's the only place I wanted to play. So as far as kind of looking at any other schools, you know, with my dad playing at Iowa State and kind of taking us to every football game, as many basketball games we could go to, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. If they would have let me sit on the end of the bench for 4 years, I'd have signed up in a heartbeat.
So people probably don't, you know, unless they're as old as I am, probably don't remember your dad, but your dad he's in the Hall of Fame. Am I right?
Iowa High School. Yeah.
Oh, Iowa High School.
Yeah. So, football, yeah.
Yeah. And so he told me the story that you guys were digging through his stuff and found his offer from Notre Dame. Is that right? Do you remember that?
We saw his, you know, I'll give my dad was phenomenal. I think I want to say he was like the Gatorade. I don't know what they called it back in the 70s, but was the high school athlete of the year in Iowa. And he got offered by every single school in the country pretty much except Ohio State.
Wow.
And that was kind of it's funny you say it because that was his dream school. That's where he wanted to go. But no, he still, we dug up a bunch of his recruiting letters. I mean, Tom Osborne had handwritten notes to him. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was back when Iowa had all those great assistant coaches. So kind of seeing what they would do, and he even took a picture. It was probably a few years ago, but it's just kind of funny now with social media compared to what they're doing back then. But it's like newspaper clippings and a picture of like my dad and his girlfriend, and which is my mom now. But how they were kind of putting things, this little collage together, and it was pretty cool to see that type of stuff.
Yeah, I knew that, I guess I didn't know he had that many offers, but that's how I got to know you. Is actually we were next door neighbors when my first year I was married, and
Yeah,
it's an off story, but your dad is a big dude. He was an offensive lineman in the Big Eight back then, again with Earl Bruce. So there's he was on a good team, and he knocked on our door and had a plate of cookies in his hand in his swimsuit. And my wife she had no idea what was going on. Who is this guy with cookies? And it was your dad, who's one of the nicest people on the planet. I've known him forever. And that was my introduction to the Neal family. And I could go on and on about stories about you guys. So tell me about, tell us about your first introduction to a Eustachy practice, or how you kind of got into that whole thing.
Oh man, you'd hear about it. You'd hear about it from other guys. You talk to other former players and then guys that were kind of going in, and it was the most intimidating thing just hearing about it, because there were legendary stories. And I remember our first practice, he would have, we would start the practice where he'd have almost like team unity type things that he'd institute for obviously a number of reasons, but we call them the links, and we'd run together as a team in a straight line, and we'd go down and back 5 times, and it had to be perfect, and it had to be under 30 seconds. And if it wasn't perfect, then you'd start over, and then you'd stop and start over. And then after that, we'd go in, we transitioned to this fast break layup drill. And I remember we did that for about 30 minutes, and that was considered like the warm up. And we missed 2 layups in like 30, 40 minutes. And I remember him just stopping. He said, obviously, you guys don't want to warm up, so I'll warm you up. And I'm not BSing you. We ran for sprints 2 hours straight. And I just thought, no way we're going to practice. He goes, okay, guys, now we can start practice. And it was, I knew right then and there, this was going to be a unique experience. But I loved those starts. I mean, you were challenged from minute 1 to depending on how many hours we practiced, to the very end. You were challenged mentally and physically, and it was never an individual challenge. It seemed like he always found a way, even with individual drills, to bring the team together. And it seemed like we were all invested in something, or had something to lose. And I think there was some real genius behind that with what he was able to accomplish from just a training and conditioning perspective.
Wow.
Yeah. But that was brutal. I remember that. I remember just that inner thought of like, oh man, I don't know what I got myself into.
You're not in Winterset anymore.
That's so exactly right.
When you were in high school, did you go to like the Tinsley games? Did you get to attend any of those games? So like
I did, not only Tinsley, but shoot, I was going back to the games when Hurl Beacham was throwing up, Hoiberg, Lauren Meyer, all those guys. So I was diehard. I mean, I remember when you'd wait for the players, similar out, to our locker room, they used to come up. We'd come through the stadium, but they'd come up the stairwell behind Hilton Coliseum there, and just hoping and wishing to get one of their autographs and kind of hanging out. It was that as many games as we could go to, but we also football games, Troy Davis. I mean, we would do anything to get back, and it was kind of cool. I don't know if you remember this, Craig, but my dad, he was the sideline reporter.
Oh, right. Vividly.
He did some of it for a couple of years. So we got to go back and hear McCarney talk and listen to Troy Davis give interviews. And, that just tied you even closer to Iowa State, because it just made it feel like you knew the inner workings and all those things. So it was pretty unique.
Yeah. Our new sideline reporter.
No, we're good.
Our new sideline reporter for Iowa State football this year is actually from Humboldt.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, Brian Harklaw. So
yeah.
So
I think Big Brian did it for the free hot dogs and the
right.
travel. I think there were some value adds there that he took advantage of.
Well, and he had the Pete Taylor connection, of course, too.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And So like you growing up a huge Iowa State fan, do you like remember the first time running out of Hilton as a player? Like, does that stick out in your head? How special that was?
I do. I remember. I still remember the first time we used to do individual workouts, and sometimes we'd go into Hilton and do our individual workouts. So I remember the first time we did an individual workout, and just going back into the locker room and then coming out of the locker room and through, and even when there weren't any fans, you could just there was just this amazing feeling of, just, oh man, the history and just no, I mean, for me, I've never even seen, I never saw stands behind the hoop. So, just seeing this huge auditorium arena, it was so cool and something I still remember. I still remember walking out. But then when there were fans, that fight song and our fight song and all those things, and yeah, there's nothing like it. And to be honest, every time you ran out, just because of our fans, you felt it, because we always had that lower bowl filled. They were always standing, and it seemed like we always had, at least depending on who we were playing, 10,000 plus. And so you really had it each and every game.
So do you remember the very first time you had the warm up on and you ran out, what that feeling was like? I mean, especially being a fan, I mean, that had to be dream come true. Yeah.
As a player, you just think like, wow, it's something you've worked for, right? So it's just the payoff, right? That payoff of, man, all the work and all the people that have helped you through the way, and just that amazing euphoric type feeling. Yeah, it's kind of indescribable, but something I remember, and I enjoyed every second, never took it for granted.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So like, what was some of like the most memorable? Like, do you remember your like first shot that you made, like your first shot in Hilton, and like to have the crowd roar and you're like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, we did it an intra squad scrimmage, and I remember just hitting that, and that was probably in front of a couple thousand people, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And when you got into a game, the game's so fast, and it was an exhibition game. I can't remember the exact team, but I got in, and that first shot I made, you couldn't even, you almost, for me, it's almost like I forgot what I was doing after that, because I wanted to celebrate it. I wanted to run around. I couldn't, because I probably missed 10 before that. So one finally go down was a hell of a feeling. But I do remember that sometimes, even with other circumstances, you hit a big shot, you're just like, man, you want to go crazy, because you just know what was put into that, the effort that was put into it, and those type of things. So yeah.
So give everybody that's going to watch this and listen to this a little bit of context. Who were you, like your freshman year? Mm-hmm. Who was on the team? Who were you practicing with? Who were you close with?
Yeah. My freshman year, they were coming off. So the year, if we back up 2 years prior, they had won their second Big 12 championship. So they were loaded. Then they lost the majority of that team. They brought back Jake Sullivan. There were some transfers from Jake's team. So you had Jake Sullivan, you had Jared Holman, and then you had this recruiting class, which I think at the time it was a top 10, top 5 national recruiting class. And that was Jackson Vroman and Adam Haleska and Tim Barnes and Jerome Harper, Chris Alexander. And man, was that a collection of guys. I mean,
you're right. Yeah. I forgot about a couple of those names. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you had all across really the world at times with our teams. And so yeah, that I remember, we really hung out with everyone, kind of hung out, but having that eclectic group of guys that, all came from different stories and all had huge personalities. And then for me, it's kind of like, having a twist cone was a big deal, so, it was so cool to kind of interact and grow up fast in that environment. And man, even to this day, I'm super close with those guys. And yeah, I remember that freshman year just kind of thinking like, wow, this, just listening to them and going out with them, being exposed to different things. And it was very cool.
So your freshman year, you didn't get a ton of minutes, right?
No. I started playing towards the end of like the last 10 games. I got some pretty good runs where I'd maybe play like 8 to 10 minutes. We had a lot of injuries.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of got put in for defensive reasons and kind of earned my way onto the court that way. And, but not a ton. Sophomore year, I started playing more consistently.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that.
And you were there for like the ugliness of the Larry, like the end of the Larry era. Like,
Yeah.
what do you remember of like the very end of that? Was it like the turmoil that what that was?
Sure. Yeah. So he was there my freshman year, and then Coach Morgan was obviously there as well, who ended up taking over after my freshman year. But yeah, it was obviously very unfortunate. I mean, you know, a guy that had so much success. I mean, gosh, he was the national coach of the year, not Big 12, national coach of the year. And, you know, from my perspective was phenomenal. As far as just his eye for defensive principles and communicating that. I think in our everyday lives and professional lives, there's just people that can just truly communicate a message and simplify it for any audience. And man, he could do that. He could get the best out of people. And so that was tough because we kind of, you know, it started early. It started during the season. And again, dating back, there wasn't social media. So, you know, Facebook was kind of just being introduced. And so we just heard about it through like pictures, like literally like Polaroid pictures were coming out. And we didn't believe it. And guys would say, you know, that's, you know, however they're doctoring those, I don't know how you would do that. But we didn't know what to believe. And then when it kind of played its course out, and we found out that it was pretty unfortunate, just because I admired the guy just as a fan, you know, being a part of that. And obviously he had some things that kind of were inhibiting him. And obviously we kind of know his story. There was some treatment issues, but, you know, just as a coach, if you're just speaking basketball, my gosh, that guy was amazing. He was great to me. And he had an eye and a philosophy and all those things that was, for me, tremendous to be a part of and tremendous to learn from.
Yeah. And I thought highly of Coach Eustachy too. I mean, I was actually in Lubbock the night they clinched the Big 12 championship with Pfizer with him. And he was like 2 years old, and got to shake his hand at a bar, and it was just him and I and Pete Taylor and John Neal, I think. And so I don't want this to come off as me throwing him under the bus, but that Missouri game is at Columbia is where all of this precipitated.
Yep.
Your dad called me the week before and said, "Hey, what are you doing next week? John's playing in Columbia. Do you want to go?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Sure." So him and I jumped in his car and drove to Columbia. And I actually said this. I said, "So I heard Eustachy goes out downtown after we play in Missouri. We had to stay in town and hang out. Maybe we'll run into him downtown." And we just laughed it off because him and I drove back. We drove back that night.
Yeah.
And so then it was like 2 weeks later. I had seen the pictures for the first time. And I called your dad and I said, "Well, I guess I was right." And I thought nothing of it.
Yeah.
But then it was like another month that it blew up.
At least.
Yeah. And then it went bananas, and, you know, you brought up social media. Can you imagine if that would have happened today?
You would have got.
It would have been within hours. You wouldn't have survived the season. And it's just, and so I said this at the time. I actually faxed a letter that tells you how old I am. To Vandevelde saying, "There's no pictures. He's still your coach."
Yeah.
So if it's the visual that you guys can't get over.
There was a huge divide, obviously, because I mean the optics of it, but then also we were losing basketball games. That never helped. But kind of going back to your point, that's what was so great about Coach Eustachy as well. He was so approachable, right? He would have a beer, whether you were donating $50,000 a year to Iowa State, or if you were just some guy at a bar, you know, that wanted to share a story, and he could connect with either one. And you know, that's why I think there was a lot of people that had that admiration and appreciation for him throughout his years.
Well, I remember when that happened, you and I think Homan were pretty vocal about, you know, trying to keep him on too, because you showed a lot of loyalty towards him.
We did. Yeah. I mean, it was, you know, like I said, it was just like things were just different, you know, 20 years ago. It was just different how you communicated, not necessarily right or wrong. And I'm not speaking for other people's experiences or any of those things, or very sensitive to those experiences. But my personal experience, the guy made me better, and better as a basketball player, better as a person, a more disciplined person. So there's a lot of credit in all parts of my life for Coach Eustachy. Just even that year spending with him.
Yeah, it was too bad. I mean, but it's water under the bridge, and everyone moved on, and so then you transition to the Morgan years.
Yep.
And so, how was that transition? I remember his press conference and, how he ended up taking the job, but he was a heck of a recruiter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, was it a big change from a practice standpoint or?
Yeah. So, which was great. I think that was a good decision, good internal decision, obviously, to bring on Wayne. And he had a connection with not only the guys from our current team, but also the recruits. And he played a hand in Curtis Stinson, who was an all Big 12 type player, and Will Blaylock, who was an all type, a Big 12 player, played a few years in the pros. So I think he was kind of that connection and that bridge to those guys, and was able to kind of secure their commitment. So I thought it was phenomenal. I liked Wayne, still like Wayne. I mean, Wayne's a great guy. He was fun to play for, and kind of brought that excitement back to Hilton. We played a fast-paced style of basketball that was fun to watch, but also we defended. He had a unique zone defense that he brought over from Syracuse, and then also we kind of mixed up a matchup zone that he instituted. So he was, man, I loved playing for Wayne. He was a great guy. He is a great guy, and we had good teams. I think sometimes there was a few years at sophomore year, I think we fell short at a few areas, and junior year we had a great season. Senior year we had a really good team, and just, man, we lost. Gosh, I don't know what it was exactly, like 7 games under 4 points in Big 12 where we led with a minute and a half to go, or some crazy stat. So we had some good teams, and Wayne was great. Wayne was great to play for.
And go back to your sophomore year when you the Texas game, and I was grounded or whatever at the hotel, and I couldn't go to that game. So
he got in trouble, so I wouldn't let him
go. When we broke the losing streak.
Oh, the one at home where
Oh, okay.
I can't remember his name. The kid from Iowa who's in the free throw line, the place went crazy.
Boddicker. Wasn't it Boddicker? Was he missed the free throw?
I'm telling you, if you want to remember, that's one, because I don't think it was sold out, but you know how you could see, that's the loudest I've ever, when he was at the free throw line to pretty much tie or go ahead, and the crowd pretty much made him miss those free throws. It was insane. But I've got a great story for you too. When we played Texas at Texas, and we had I don't know how many conference, I think it was, we had lost maybe 15, 16, 17, whatever it was, consecutive conference road games. And Jared Holman, just bless his heart, he was he was like, we're going to win this game. Every game we went to, I think this had been that season, the 6th or 7th road game, and we lost. He's like, we're going to win, we're going to win, we're going to win. And every road game he brought, I don't know how he got these on, but 3 or 4 bottles of champagne. After Texas, he started spraying Coach Morgan, with champagne, and then dumped it on his head. And Coach Morgan was so happy. Obviously, we broke 3 was a big win, but it was so funny. I remember he goes, "You're going to pay for this $3,000 suit." But yeah, we were celebrating like rock stars after that one. It had been a long time since we had won on the road.
I vividly remember that as a kid, and just it was an overtime game, and it was I hadn't seen you guys in a road game, and probably since Tinsley was playing.
Yep, you're dead on.
And that was a special night in the Orness household for sure.
Yeah, those are always fun. You felt better the next day at school. I remember that. For some reason, Iowa State wins. It was easier to go to school the next day. Yeah.
So when that happened, tell us about that. When you were walking on campus. I talked to Tyrus McGee one time, and I said, Tell me how many people asked for your autograph when you were in high school. And he said 0.
Yeah.
So now when you're probably in Winterset, you probably didn't get your autograph asked for ever.
Yeah.
And so when that stuff like that happens, what's it like when having little kids coming up and asking for your autograph, or, some cute girl on campus is, all of a sudden talking to you because she knows you're on the team and all this kind of stuff. What's that like?
I've
never experienced it.
I tried to get some, listen, I tried to get some recognition. You'd wear the gear. And the problem was I was just an average player. So I'd be with Jared or I'd be with someone else. And they're like, yeah, that's fine, John, but we need Jared's autograph. So no, but it was, the kids, I loved coming after the games and spending time because I remember being that kid and I remember how much it meant to me. And shoot, I remember I still had footballs and basketballs and all that stuff signed from players, now 30, 40, 50 years ago. And it was so cool. So I always enjoyed that. We also got to go on a bunch of travel camps where we travel the state. And I did that.
Right.
Our assistant and some of the other players, that was cool. Not only did you get to meet the kids, you get to play with the kids and practice and show them drills and interact, but you get to meet the families and spend time with them and then meet some of the donors and boosters and kind of hear their stories and talk about their business and the success they've had. So it was, Iowa State is such a unique university from their fans and donors and everything. They're just really good people. And that's what I really enjoyed. You felt that they authentically cared about, how you were doing and the success you had both on and off the court, which I don't know if that's always the case with other schools, but it felt like that when I was there.
I think that travel camp stuff has gone away.
Yeah, I don't think
they do that anymore, which is too bad.
Is it illegal or?
Yeah, I don't know.
Paying guys too much?
Because you guys came to Fort Dodge St. Edmunds, I remember.
Yeah.
And Tashid Carr was there. Curtis was there.
Yep.
And I don't know how old you were.
I was probably like 6 or 7.
And so he was playing, and he was kind of a quiet kid, and they asked him what to call him, and he said, "Call me T.O." And so Curtis and Tashid were super nice to him, and they kept calling him T.O. when I picked him up, and I was just dying laughing. I thought it was so funny because, couldn't get 5 words out of him at home, but now he's got Curtis Stinson calling him T.O.
Got nicknames. He's got.
Right. So then the next winter, we go to an Iowa State game, and we always hung around and got autographs for these guys.
Yeah.
Thomas walks up to Curtis Stinson and gets his autograph. And I am not kidding you. This is 6 months later. Curtis hands it back to him and goes, "Here you go, T.O." So he remembered him from a little camp in Fort Dodge. Yeah. It was crazy.
They were, and those were great. Same stories where, you remembered, you had fun with it. And it's too bad they don't do those anymore because that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that in a year or two, I think the paycheck will be there for them to do that. Unfortunately, I think they'll be able to
name and likeness thing.
Yeah, they'll be able to go do camps around the states. I feel like that.
Yeah, that'd be huge. Hopefully that makes sense. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
and like
that'll be a game changer.
Work. They should work to something like that. That'd be a great way to interact and do a good thing and make some money.
You could have sold John Neal bobbleheads back in the day.
Yeah,
man, we tried to not bobbleheads, but we tried to run a camp after I graduated because we're like, they were making good money and
right.
It's a little different calling as John Neal Enterprises than Iowa State University.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So do you want to ready for the Iowa game yet?
Yeah. Like speaking about name, image, likeness, I think if a John Neal jersey after the Iowa game would have. And if you got a share of that, I think you'd be living in a penthouse right now. I went back and looked at, because I was really little, so I went back and watched like the end of that game. Man, that was awesome.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine what that felt like hitting those threes at the end of the game. To beat a team that you probably did not like growing up and playing against.
So it's the Steve Alford era, Pierre Pierce, who had his own problems back then. So tell us a little bit about, what it was like to hit those big threes. True Iowa State fans remember it.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that game.
It was, candidly, I hated Iowa, still hate Iowa, can't stand Iowa. And it's funny because, Adam Haleska had transferred. Remember, he had just transferred after the freshman. That was a huge deal. And you know, I'm friends with Adam to this day, and he's obviously a great guy with he's got a family in Solon, Iowa. So, but I couldn't stand him, and I had started to play, you know, going into that game, I had started playing a little bit more and had a little bit of rhythm, had come in and made some shots and was getting more and more minutes. To that point, I really hadn't played. But if we back up to shoot around, one of my dear friends then and dear friends now, Dave Edwards, was one of the coaches during that time. And I remember we'd always shoot at the end of practice, and he'd give like a situation. He's just like, I have a feeling you're going to hit a corner shot tonight. That's going to be a big deal. And he passed it out. He's like, make it now and you'll make it in the game. And just kind of, you know, getting you in that mental mindset. And so we did that. And then fast forward to that game, and, you know, it was crazy where I get in, we're trailing, and we really lost all the momentum. And fortunately, you know, it was a drive and kick play, as I remember, and they kicked it out. And for whatever reason, I just knew I was going to make that shot in the corner. And then I had another shot come my way. I just, for whatever reason, just was in a great rhythm and felt confident. And that was another time where Hilton just went bananas. And I was acrobatic, doing somersaults. I mean, I look back now because there's some photos people are showing me, and I just think, what the heck is that moron doing? Like pumping fists, like, you know, it's almost like something out of Major League Baseball, you know, the movie where they're like going nuts and losing their mind. So I look back and it still brings a smile on my face because, you know, for me, it was such a big deal because I hated Iowa. I loved Iowa State more than anything. It was a big game for us. You know, as a team, we kind of went on this great run, and man, everyone had plays. Jackson had huge plays, and Jake had a phenomenal game, but just kind of going through that, there was no better feeling, you know, hitting those shots, being a part of it. And then I didn't know that it would kind of take off like it did. I mean, I made a few shots, and then next thing I knew it, they were writing articles in the paper pretty much saying, like, John Neal beat Iowa. I mean, you would have thought I scored 100 points sometimes as the story kind of grew.
I found it. This is the Waterloo Courier from 2004.
Yeah.
It says Cyclones find the real Neal.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I loved it. I don't know who wrote that, but I mean, I loved him for doing it. It was so much fun to be a part of and to kind of share that experience with some of my high school friends that were big Iowa State fans. And obviously my dad, he was actually out of town. I didn't know if you knew this, but he was traveling back and forth. He had to miss that game for work. He was partnering with a guy in California, and they're still partners to this day, business wise. And so it was a great cause, right? But I still remember his phone call, and it's just, you know, kind of sharing that moment with your dad as you guys would both know of going to games your entire life. And that was pretty cool, where it's like, you know, he said some nice things, and I'll always remember that.
So the plays, you know, he had a couple threes that were a pivotal part of the game.
Yeah.
Then the one that the coach and me probably got the most excited about is that you hit a three, and then you come down and you take a charge on Pierre Pierce, which was a huge part of the game.
And a man now for the Cyclones. Neal, he forced another turnover.
He's able to stay in front of him.
Neal, one small step for man, one giant leap for the Cyclones.
You know, I mentioned earlier about Blaylock's defense
And I remember you getting up and pointing the other direction. It was just a phenomenal play.
I mean, we had, God, he was before his time. Dave Edwards, he was our director of basketball ops. He was our scout guy, but he would put so much time into tendencies. And you fast forward, and I think it's kind of like what they're seeing now, but he was so ahead of his time on what guys would do in specific situations where, like, hey, if he needs a basket, or if he's at the top of the key, or if he's doing these type of things, he usually goes left, but he'll go left specifically if it's this situation. I just remembered, like, he's going to go this way, so I was able to jump and get lucky, and that was a big play. But it was fun. I mean, I love the coaches, teammates. That's what you miss out of all those things. Just the experience you had with those guys and the celebrating in the locker room and, you know, having some fun afterwards as well.
So you were playing against other Iowans in that
Yeah.
game. Well, you're playing against Jeff Warner, Glenn Worley.
Yeah.
Like,
So is there,
like
Right.
Holsko
I
was
forgot
sitting out
about-
that year too.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I forgot about Glenn Worley. Adam Halesko. Halesko was a redshirt that year, and then Horner, Bruner.
oh yeah.
Like you had said, they had a really good team. You know, I think a year or two after that, they were like a 2 or 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. They were really good, and those guys,
Right.
beating those guys was even better. Still to this day, I don't know what my deal is, but I just can't stand. I just can't stand Iowa.
So was there any talking going on during that game?
You know, I never really talked to guys. I never talked a lot to guys, and I never got into it. Not a ton. Those guys would just kind of say, you know, most of the times it'd be like, hey, how you doing? How's, you know, that type of stuff, just because you've known each other since AAU, but nothing too bad.
Can you say the same thing about Holman?
Holman's always had something to say.
Yeah.
He would, you know, what'd be great is, and I still give him crap to this day. There was never if you took a shot and missed it, he'd be pissed off because he'd essentially say you could have passed it inside of me, like you missed it, so that's on you. He'd be yelling at me down the court, like kick it inside. You know, if I ever missed a shot, which time to time would happen, but he cracked me up with that stuff. He always wanted the ball.
So how good at trash talking was Stinson?
Man, Kurt would talk a little bit, but I don't know if you guys remember, he was just so serious.
Oh, right.
You would just see it in his eye, and he would get like in a mood or in this, you know, and you didn't want to, even as us, you just let Kurt kind of do his thing, but he was focused. But I remember when Quinn Snyder, do you remember this? It was his freshman year, and Quinn Snyder had kind of said like, hey, I don't believe that Curtis back up. So Curtis he did the prep school route. So he was actually 2 years removed from high school coming to Iowa State.
Right.
Quinn Snyder said, you know, I don't think that the Big 12 freshman of the year should be a guy that's been 2 years removed to high school. It should be a true freshman. Oh man, Kurt heard that in the paper, and Kurt read everything. He knew everything from play. I mean, that guy was so smart. And I remember he didn't say anything all game. We beat Missouri, and he went up, and I don't know what he said to Quinn Snyder, but you could just see the look. And I think he's a nice guy, really nice guy. I don't think he meant that at all, but it's kind of that fuel that you use to get your on. And Quinn's like, coach, you know, he went to Wayne and all the coaches like, I didn't mean disrespect by it, but it fueled Curtis. And I remember that was Kurt. He'd wait, and then when he proved you wrong, you knew it.
He was strong too, right? I mean,
So good.
Yeah.
So good, so strong. I mean, Kurt ended up leaving after his junior year. I wish he would have came back one more year. He was such a great college player, and you know, just a few things. I mean, guys, it's so close from, you know, playing overseas and in the NBA and in the D League and all these things. I mean, because you see these guys now. I mean, some guys are in the D League and they end up getting their shot and they play fantastic in the NBA. And he was so close. I remember they won a championship with the Iowa Energy team, and he was phenomenal. I loved Kurt. Great guy, great competitor, and one of those guys you just miss.
And did you have to guard those guys in practice, like Blaylock and Kurt Stinson? That was kind of probably tough for you.
Oh, it was brutal. Jake, you know, Jake Sullivan was the one too. My freshman and sophomore year, we played because we were both two guards. So he'd be on first, I'd be on reserve, and man, Jake, and I think Jake was sick of me because I'd foul him. The only way, if I wasn't beating Jake, then I was never going to get in the game. So, you know, anything I could do to make Jake look bad, and Jake would get annoyed with me. He'd slap me a few times in the back of the head and run, but that was our competition was a friendly but great one, and we went at each other 2 years pretty good.
So you also played with Sean Taggart, right? And so then he ended up going to Memphis.
Yeah. Gross playing the Final Four. I was going to bring that up. So, your senior year, you come out your first exhibition game and you lose to EA Sports.
Yeah.
What happened there? I don't know.
What? That's a great question. That's a deal where any game, probably not focused. Probably, we started. I think we were ranked to start the season too.
Yeah, you guys would look back at a loaded roster like with Sean Taggart.
We'd have loaded. Here's the deal with Sean Taggart. He got sick.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He was a 4-star. He was like a 4, close to a 5-star guy coming out. He could have gone to like Memphis and still ended up going to Memphis. But he got super sick, lost like 30 pounds.
Oh, really?
And he was kind of supposed to be that anchor of that team. And that set us back. And he was never right. He never got right all year. He was so talented. And we were just missing a few things that year. We lost so many close games, just, down the stretch that we shouldn't have. But yeah, that was tough. But the EA Sports, I probably missed a few shots. I'm sure we, probably weren't connected and dialed in. That stuff just happens, right?
Right. I mean, we're talking to Shane Power, and I said, when you guys came off the Big 12 championship game, you went to overtime with Morningside the next year to open the year, and everybody's looking at each other. What is going on? So, I mean, exhibition games are what they are.
I think it was on a Sunday too.
And that junior season where, people, you get a little complacent. People are patting you on the back. We had a good finish to our junior season, went to the NCAA tournament. That's when we played Carolina in the NCAA tournament. The team that won it all. I think that might have been Roy Williams' first national championship. That's when they were just loaded with like 4. I think they had 4 lottery pick guys in their starting lineup.
Sean May and Ty Lawson, they were loaded.
Yep.
Speaking of that, tell us some of the guys you guarded. Some of the most talented players. You were, in front of them guarding him. So, man, I can't believe I'm guarding this guy. Or the play, maybe you saw somebody do something that, was only going to be on a video game, and then you're watching it live while you're playing. Is there something that comes to mind?
Who was great? I always was in. I'll give you. I was always in awe of the shots Jake Sullivan could make. Because he was, and everyone saw it, but just imagine then in practice what he would do, because in the game it's so much faster and everything. In practice, you would be just hanging on him, and he wouldn't miss. We'd play pickup games. He'd shoot like 80% from 3. So I was always amazed by how well he could shoot the ball. But as far as competition, Tony Allen was so strong. I remember there was a time we were going for a loose ball, and he went for it. I went for it, and he picked up the ball. I'm not kidding. He picked the ball and myself up. He was both up. And feel like this, I wasn't a small guy. I was at 195, 200, and I just felt like a little baby in his arms. Like the guy could have just dropped me at any moment, But he was good. Kirk Heinrich, he was another one of those amazing players, because he was a floor general and could do anything, and was so fast. Obviously ended up having, 10 plus years, I think, in the NBA, played on the.
Tony Allen was in the NBA a long time too.
Tony Allen, he was an all defensive guy for a number of years. So those guys were pretty tough for sure.
So do you remember a dunk or anything like that?
You know who dunked on our head, who came up and I just knew it was over. Do you remember Joey Graham at Okie State?
No, that's one I don't remember.
I don't remember.
That was when they made the Final Four with Eddie Sutton, and he came up. I'll never forget. Joey Graham came up and took off. I thought it was the free throw line, and I just got out of the way. What were you going to do? Especially for me, I could barely dunk it. But there was a few good ones. I would also remember, what I remember a ton too was the places we played. There was nothing like Allen Fieldhouse and going to Okie State. But Allen Fieldhouse was great because their students would come in, similar to what they're doing now with the Cyclone Alley. They come in an hour and a half before the game, and they would just drill you the entire time from warm-ups throughout the game. But those places, I remember those. It was pretty unique to play in those different arenas and in those atmospheres.
What about the Antlers in Missouri? They're legendary for being pretty abusive.
They were good. What was the old is it the Hearns? What was the old center?
I think so, yeah.
Oh man, that was probably one of the louder ones, because it just went straight up. It was just built to where it went straight up, and it seemed like there were like 6 levels. but yeah, Missouri was a tough place it's a tough place to play as well.
So you go from not winning a Pig 12 road game until you beat Texas, and then a couple weeks later you win at Kansas. They're number 2 in the nation, or number 3 in the nation. So
Yeah.
like, what was that? It was just, what was that? How was that game? Like, do you remember anything that for particular in that game that you're like, wow, we're doing this?
We went on a nice run. I think we had won. We started Big 12 play 0-5, and then we won, I think, 7 or 8 straight. And Kansas was one of them. And I don't think Kansas had lost a home game, and I think they'd won like 50 straight.
Yeah.
And I remember Curtis Stenson. You know, he had a week before with practice where, you know, he was pissed about something. You know, he wasn't seeing eye to eye on some things with coaches, and you just didn't know. You're like, man, we've been on such a run. And Kurt came out. I don't know what he finished with. He could have been close to 30, but he just carried us that entire game because it wasn't a high scoring game, but just big shot after big shot. And it seems like whenever you play at Kansas, you got to play against, you know, the crowd, and some of the calls don't go your way. And yeah, I remember that. That was another moment that, you know, when we won that one, we didn't dump champagne on Wayne. You know what we dumped on Wayne? An entire cooler of water.
And ruined another $3,000 suit.
Ruined another suit. But not a lot of people would, you know, the feeling we had, not a lot of people win at Kansas. And, you know, that bus ride home and, you know, that feeling that was awesome. It really was. But I remember Curtis Stenson, Jared Holman got every rebound that game. And, yeah, it was one of those things where Kirk kind of took us on his back, just was that guy the entire game.
Were you part of the phantom free throw at the Kansas too? You remember that?
Yeah.
Because I remember Holman, I thought he was going to have an aneurysm, and I about did watching the game because I knew what was going on.
Yeah. That was, I think that was the following, or maybe it was our sophomore year, one of the two, but yeah.
That was insane.
Insane. To this day, I'll never understand how we had 2 free throws. We shoot one, miss the first free throw. They take it. You know who hit it? I think J.R. Giddens or something hits.
Right. It was J.R. Giddens. Yeah.
And they screw up, but instead of going back and taking away the 3 they make, they give them credit for the 3. We have to shoot 1 free throw, and then they get the ball back. I mean, it's insane. It's kind of like,
didn't they end up winning by like 3 points?
Yeah, we ended up coming back and making it a game, and that was kind of the deciding factor. And, you know, it's funny, you ask them what's going on, they just shrug their shoulders like, you know, what do you want us to do? And now they've gotten better where they'll get plays right. Geez, back then they would just shrug their shoulders and say, it is what it is. It's already been played, you know, move on.
Well, I mean, I remember watching the game live and yelling that, you know, it's 2 shots, and Holman standing on the lane saying, what are we doing? And then they make the shot, then they blow the whistle.
Yeah.
And then it's the referee from Orange City.
Yeah.
The referee.
Holman finally had an excuse not to get back. That was finally his excuse to hustle back to the other end of the floor.
I remember Coach Morgan talking to that guy that's the Division I ref from Orange City, and I remember watching them saying, there's nothing we can do. And I said, man.
They always said, you know, it was crazy. You get that a lot to where, you know, it's changed so much now. And I get it. They had a tough job. You don't have replay, and the technology is not even close to the same. But that's all they'd say. Like, what do you want us to do? There's nothing we can do.
But they gave you the free throw. So they acknowledged they messed up. Because otherwise they're giving you the other.
We went back and shot the free throw. That's what was crazy. Back and shot the free throws.
Shot like a technical free throw. There's no one on the line. It was just him.
Yeah.
That was. I'm still getting wound up after watching that game. That was crazy.
Can you imagine if Larry was a coach still?
Oh man, I'd love those things. He would. I'm talking the entire game was just on, guys, and that was another thing with Larry, where just grown men were just intimidated by the guy. He had such a presence, and yeah, it was, you know, it would have been interesting to see. He would have been ejected. I know that. There would have been. Oh, yeah, he would have been
ejected too. I mean, Johnny Orr would have been run out of that one.
I think Wayne got it. That's what was unfortunate. I don't know if they teed him up though. I don't know. I think they knew they screwed up so bad. I don't know if Wayne got a T. I don't think he did.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know we're going back and forth here, but I just had a thought come to mind. So when you made those threes against Iowa, I'm sorry that we're going backwards, but I don't know if you remember this or not, but there's a guy named Steve Dace who's got a big podcast now. He was on the Jock, I think, and one
KXNO or whatever it was.
Whatever it is, and he interviewed you, and I listened to it the next day. Do you remember what you said to him when he said, "What did you do after making these big shots in the game and becoming a legend in Iowa State history?" Do you remember what you said to him?
No.
So he said, "My mom and dad and I went out to Culver's, and
that's right,
celebrated." And so Steve Day starts making fun of you. He goes, "What a very Iowa thing to do! Make some of the biggest shots of your life and go get a couple Butterburgers."
Yeah, that's right. Cheese curds too, right? You can't. Culver's that's an institution. No, I do remember Steve Days. Yeah, Culver's. That's exactly what we did. That's funny.
Growing up an Iowa State fan, do you remember any games like particular, like what are your favorite games going in person?
Oh gosh, I went to a couple of the Kansas games where they won with Hoiberg. With some of those, it was a tough ticket. It was we'd usually have to go just because it was so hard to get in those games. You catch them on TV, but we'd usually have to go to those non-conference type games. But I was able to see a couple Kansas games. I was also able to see a Kansas game when what was it, the year before I went, and that was when Drew Gooden was there, and they had that really good team that was, I think, number one in the country the entire year. But yeah, I was able to see a Hoiberg game where they beat, and that's just, you guys know this. That's there's nothing better than going to the game. I have an older brother. We'd get it going, do that, and half the time we'd be getting in trouble. The other half we'd be, watching the games and doing that. Or with football games, we'd be sliding down the hill and flying through stuff, trying to break in to the locker room when no one's in there. So we were always finding things to do. But man, there was nothing better than going to games. I just remember all of it, just in a collection of great games, whether it's football or basketball.
So who do you keep in contact with out of those guys you've listed off you played with? Is there guys that, you said something about Haluska. I'm assuming he's Holman and you still keep in contact.
Yeah. Every once in a while with Holman. Jared's one of my best friends, and gosh, I talk to him every other day or sometimes every day. And he's in similar field. He's in the healthcare field like I am. And so we've got a lot in common from that standpoint. Coach wise, Dave Edwards, I still stay in contact with him. He was an assistant when I was there. You'll do, like, with what's great with Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, you'll send guys messages and stay in touch with, like, Curtis and Will and all of those guys as well. Dave Brait, he's down in Florida. He's owns Jimmy John's locations now. He's setting that up. Maybe.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So he's down there conquering the Jimmy John's world in Florida. But
cool.
Any guys I can. I got to get better. I know I don't think they did last year, but doing every August, I think they bring all the players back. So I've got to get back and see the guys, because that's what you remember out of all this stuff. It's the games are great and all those things, but it's the people. If the people that you meet and the experiences that you share, I mean, that's what you take with you.
And you guys are such a, ingrained in the Iowa State, family. I mean, your dad, legendary. I mean, then you were, obviously had your moment in the sun with Iowa State. Patrick played defensive end for Iowa State. So, and I tailgated with your dad. And like I said, you've been in and out of Iowa State forever. And, it's got to be kind of fun heading into a football season that everybody's looking forward to, because you remember the Troy Davis days. But now I don't know if we've ever had a more hyped year than this. And back when your dad was playing, we were really good, but everybody's taking our word for it because games weren't on TV. I mean, when I was a kid, in the late 70s in junior high, you'd see maybe one game a year if you're lucky. And now it's, with all of the social media and everything, everybody's so hyped about football that.
Yeah, I mean, that you're exactly. I mean, with John Quinn and Mike Stendrud and Randall and all these great guys, they had so many good players. You have to, and I'd always hear it. It's funny. We'd watch videos with my dad, we make fun of him just because they're about 260 now, they're 320,
Right.
and it's like you would have been a free safety back then, Dad, and he gets competitive with that. But I'm excited. I'll be heading out to Vegas for the football game against UNLV and back for the Iowa game, and it seems like Campbell's all in. It's certainly he's committed to Iowa State. Obviously, Iowa State's committed to him, and it's pretty exciting what he's done. I mean, especially being here in Chicago, you just see more and more fans. Games are being played at the bar. When I first moved here, nothing was on, and it seems like just that consistency over the years that he's built. It's been fun to watch, and it sounds like they're going to have a pretty special year. Sounds like they've got the right guy that's hopefully going to stick around.
Yeah, you mentioned that Vegas game. They set the times today. It's a 7:30.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
what time is it? Night game?
Night game, 7:30.
7:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be a mess.
It's going to be a long day.
That'll be. Are you guys going to go out?
I think I am for sure. I'm not sure.
Are you?
Yeah, I've still got a sophomore playing in high school, so he'll have a game Friday night. So
Oh, that's right.
I'm not going to miss that. But
No, that's tough.
but
It'll be fun. I mean, I don't know how UNLV is supposed to look. Iowa's it sounds like they're gonna be tough. But what are your kind of thoughts on Campbell and everything? I mean, I know the entire state is pretty excited about this team and the success they've had.
It's honestly, I have to pinch myself we haven't had a season like half the hype this year. And growing up as an Iowa State fan, we were not very good.
Yeah.
The Athlon, the magazines, us being the top 10, it's just it's unreal. And last year I had a chance to go to some games when it was the COVID year, and it was just such a strange, eerie feeling of we have one of the best probably the best team in Iowa State we ever had, and we have 15,000 fans there, and I just couldn't imagine what it would have been like with your dad. I don't know if your dad went to any games last year, who has been an Iowa State guy for a long time, and he couldn't go to the games back then last year. And
That's the tough part. Yeah, you really feel like you missed out on some of that success. Hopefully this year they'll get to where they need to. So
well, I mean, your dad, got me into the Sukup Center. I'd never been in that place before. I mean,
man, their facilities
crazy. I mean, the facilities
they're still building. I mean, they're building. It seems like they're putting more and more. And that's such a credit to Jamie Pollard as well, man. He came in, when we were still there, and he's been fantastic, and it's kind of followed through on everything he said. He's really built great programs, hired some great coaches, and he's raised a lot of money.
No kidding. Well, so have you followed the whole TJ thing? I mean, with all of the transfers, I mean, that's just been complete metamorphosis over the last 3 months.
Yeah. I don't know the exact specifics. I met TJ just briefly. They came in after my senior year. But you just kind of know when you meet guys, he was personal, friendly, engaging, very, very nice guy. You could tell he was a talented guy that just, connected it with each person he interacted with. And everyone loved him. So it seemed like they got the right guy. And he's had success. My gosh, he's been from school to school, just kind of getting promoted wherever he's landed. So he's had a ton of success. And it looks like early on he's having that same success in the recruiting battle.
It's crazy that your era actually butts up against the TJ era just a little bit, because Dermott comes in the next year.
Came in, yep.
With TJ, and now, we're talking about stuff that seems like it was a long time ago, but that brings it into a reality that it wasn't that long ago.
He was in his mid to late 20s, and you just kind of know those type of guys. He was in mid to late 20s, and you knew he was talented and special, and that he got it. And fast forward 15, 20 years later, and he's running the program. So
it's crazy.
I've no doubt that he's the right guy, and that they're gonna get back to where they need to be.
So tell us what you're doing now, John. I mean, tell us a little bit about what your life is like now.
Yeah, it's I live like I said, living in downtown Chicago. I'm in healthcare industry and have been in the healthcare medical sales diagnostic for about the last 10 years and have worked with some really great companies. Boston Scientific, currently with Abbott, and treating patients with chronic pain with implantable devices. So, it's nice that you go in to work each day and see that there's a lot of pain out there. There's a lot of stories to where people are going through a lot more than you are, and to really not take life for granted, because usually where we see these patients, they're kind of at the end of the pain cycle and they don't have any options. The procedure we're offering is kind of their last chance. So similar to us kind of talking about stories in basketball and all those types of things. You meet these people that kind of had normal lives and had a traumatic event, and their entire life changes. And so we've kind of played a part in helping them and providing a therapy that's very successful and kind of restoring some of the things that others take for granted. So it's been something I've been in for about 10 years now and love it. Kind of humbles you and gets you to appreciate things. But and then for fun, I got golf a ton. Love it with Chicago and things opening up. Love kind of going out and enjoying the variety of restaurants we have, and then gosh, I'd be crazy to say that I don't go to Bulls games. The Bulls games that have opened up: Cubs, White Sox, Bears. I mean, it's the best sport restaurant city you can imagine. So it's a lot of fun.
And you're not very far from home either, so you can still get back to the Neal stuff and all that, right?
I try to get, both my brothers have, one's got two and the other one just had a little baby girl. So my mom's a grandmother, she's in heaven. So I get back as much as I can.
I still remember your youngest brother when I lived next door to you. I was watching TV and he runs by in diapers down the middle of the street, and your mom, no, excuse me, your mom goes for a walk with the neighbor.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, here comes your little brother in diapers going like this.
Yeah.
Her mom chasing her down the street. So that was another one of my Neal.
It's funny because, you always, my brothers complain and my poor mom, my dad was a traveling salesperson for years and kind of started his own business and was always gone. And she had 4 boys that didn't listen to a thing. And I don't know how she did it. God bless her. But neighbors, you talk to neighbors, we were running around diapers, breaking stuff, whatever it was. We were a handful.
Yeah, Patrick used to run around our house and knock on the windows. It was 12 months that I'll never, or what, I don't even know if it was that long we lived next door.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun because
it was a lot of fun.
Other stories that I'm not going to try to embarrass.
You were a good neighbor. There was neighbors that definitely got tired of us. That's for sure.
Right.
Well, yeah, I looked up to you. It was easy to look up to you because my dad knew your whole family and you were living my dream. I was living through you, like the Iowa game and the Texas game, the Kansas game. And it was awesome watching you growing up and meeting you. And you were so nice. I remember when you were so little, you were so nice to me. And I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Plug your dad's deal. I mean, this is unsolicited, but Neal Insurance in West Des Moines, Brian Neal and your brothers, if you ever want to throw some business their way, I'm sure Brian wanted to turn it down. Tell them Sound the Sirens sent you there. That's totally unsolicited plug for your dad. So
if you're looking for anything, give them a call. And then if you want to make fun of me, give them a call.
Right. Well, John, I really appreciate you helping out. You're only what number of interviews is this?
This is number 3, number 4.
You're one of the first interviews for this. So we're getting merch coming. So we'll have to get your sizes and we'll get it out to you. So
good. I love good merchandise. Yeah, send it my way. You guys, I watch the other ones. It sounds like you guys are creating some good momentum. Best of luck.
I mean, he did all of this. This is all his deal.
Cool.
I'm just filling in as the historical guy when we bring in stuff that he doesn't remember. Yeah. So
you have to do when you're out in Vegas, you have to run around and kind of do a whole deal, like a little Vegas trip and get the experience from all angles. Get it from the casino, the game, the tailgate, and everything.
Now, who knows? We might run into each other on the tailgate lots.
I hope so.
Yeah. So we really appreciate it, John.
Thanks,
All
John.
right, guys. Thanks
Appreciate
for having me on. It was great talking to you. Have a nice night, okay?
it.
You too.